Hey, Mike.
All
Great.
right. Hi.
Yeah, I'm very keen to start probably with your background, obviously how Plot came to existence, and then, yeah, we can jump into some of the questions.
Yeah, sounds good. It came to existence through me quitting my job, or actually deciding not to take another one. So at the end of October last year, I left my job at Genetics, where I was VP of product. I'd been there for 3 years, incredible team, loved the team there, and really tackled the big challenge of kind of getting some really strong product market fit signals. And then I was offered the role of chief of product at another really great company. On paper, best move I could make, but I just knew straight away it wasn't the right call. I decided to leave, much to the dismay and confusion to those around me. So naturally, it began with my friends asking me why, how, what's next, as you'd expect. And I have a long history of annoying the people around me by making what they seem to consider as very risky decisions. But for me, it's always just felt right. So my friend then started getting into a little bit more detail and coming out of the woodwork to say, oh, well, we feel incredibly stuck in our careers. It was on a spectrum. Some people, I feel as though I've deserved a promotion, earned a promotion 6 months ago, 12 months ago. I don't know how to have the conversation. Others more severe, I feel like I'm in the totally wrong career. What do I do? They're at the stage in their lives where they have children, mortgages. It's a big move conceptually. So naturally, I started to think, well, suddenly I have all this time. I'm running back-to-back meetings all day. Is there a product opportunity here? Because if my friends are experiencing this, surely many other people are. And lo and behold, many millions of other people are, it seems. Again, on a spectrum from slightly dissatisfied to I'm in the totally wrong career. So Plot came around from that discovery, really. And fast forward to today, it's myself and my co-founder Ted. He and I have worked together on and off for the past 6-7 years. He's an iOS and product leader, great engineer, great commercial mind as well. And we are building what we hope will prove to be a really great application of Gen AI. And then we're at the stage now where Gen AI is becoming robust enough as a platform, whether it's video, audio, chat-based models, where consumer products can start to be built on top of that. And I think this is a really great problem to try to address with that new set of technologies.
So, and I guess on that note, maybe talk me through how you think about the tech stack and the build and what you're building in-house, kind of what you see on Moat as from that perspective.
Yeah, so I think that's where things are going to get really interesting for like over the next couple of years, where people find defensibility. It's kind of like, I mean, cloud's not quite the same, but the early days of the internet for sure, right? Where suddenly everyone has access to this kind of early stage technology. Where do you find the differences? And I think for us, it will be a case of, I think the only way really you can win by the looks of it is through incredible design and really smart distribution. The things that scale ups now will know, typical companies that we think of today, they know that is the way that you win now, unless you're building proprietary tech. So I think that's going to be something that you have to think about from the ground up as a startup now, which perhaps you didn't have to do, 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, totally agree. And I guess on that point, maybe from my perspective, take me through how you see the customer journey and kind of the initial MVP and product launch. I think that's helpful to frame how you're thinking about it.
Yeah. So this comes through part my own experiences of how I think about my life, and through speaking to others, and also through some research in clinical psychology. So the product is broken up into past, present, future. Very simple on the surface, but it goes incredibly deep. So each of those areas of the product are distinct AIs that have been trained to really focus on those three mindsets. So we start right at the beginning. The beginning of the product experience is really getting into the core of who somebody is. So what brought you the most joy as you were growing up? What brought you the most pain? Where did you live? Who with? Etc. We really get right down into the detail. And the outcome of that is something that we're really excited to experiment with at the moment, is a daydream-like collage of your life that's been produced through Gen AI.
Mhm.
And we're looking at Runway and Llama, etc., to see if we can experiment there. So that's the first thing. Like, we can't make any deduction about what might the problem be today unless we know a lot about who you are. So that could take.
And so just on that, the expectation of like how a customer interacts with that, how long that takes, is it something that is kind of set and forget? Do you add to the past section over time? What's your expectation in terms of time commitment for people here?
Yeah, we want to keep that really open. I'm sure we'll find a median as people start to use it, but someone may want to just bash through it and get really into it over the course of 2 hours. Someone else may want to spend 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Something might come up and they'll need to go back and add something. So the way that we structure this is there's a lot of input that happens through part product experience that we hard design in, part chat-based conversational. And the output of that is we structure that data then into chapters and moments. Chapters are what you imagine they would be. Childhood could be an example, and there are probably some standout moments that you can think back to that really had an impact on who you ended up becoming. So that's the output of the past conversation. And again, you know, that could be something that someone is happy to do on a long train journey. Someone may want to spend more time. And then that unlocks the present. Then there's a moment that we'll get to where between us and the person using the product, we'll get to the stage where, okay, we have enough. Now let's look at the past. And that's where we kind of instigate the next phase of the product then.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I guess talk me through the sort of expectations about how people use this on an ongoing basis. You know, it feels like perhaps they come into it at a pivotal point, and then how are you expecting that they interact and use it kind of on a go forward?
Yeah, so following that kind of, I guess, therapeutic process, the present is really about coaching. So, for example, at the moment we're structuring it around a 2-week time frame. So we'll do some calendar integrations. We're looking at a lot at what Superhuman have done for email, and seeing if we can learn some things there. But it'll really be about, okay, you have an important meeting that you have every Monday at 10 a.m. and you feel 6 hours of anxiety running up to it every week. Why? What's the problem? What can we learn from what you've told us so far to help with that particular problem? So that it'll be about kind of improving your mindset over the course of however long that may take, right? Again, this will depend on someone's severity of how dissatisfied they are. But that's kind of like the coach will be the person to kind of, okay, we've got some problems here. How can we address them frequently and take small steps to improving the life that you have now, whether you feel as though it needs to change significantly or not? There are some things that we can help with today.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And so how you're thinking about building out your initial customer base, talk me through that.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. So slight bias perhaps, but I come from a product background, and I know that product people tend to have incredibly wiggly paths in, and their paths out can be incredibly wiggly. Generalists by nature, for the most part, that can be great, but it can also cause a lot of mental strife. So they're the people that we're going to go to first. And there's a few reasons. That is one very good reason. Another reason is that they tend to be kind of amongst the earliest of early adopters, just through their own curiosity and wanting to use new products. They tend to offer great feedback without having to ask them too much, just because it's what they want from their roles as well. So they're just a really good audience. It's a group that I understand deeply. It's a group that I have a strong network to connect with. And then also because they're kind of the super connectors of the business, we can then use that group, if we do a good job at that, to move into design, engineering. So really kind of find our way through a tech organization, essentially, starting with that group.
Cool. And then post-raise, key hires, primary things you're spending the money on.
Yeah, well, this is where things get really interesting now, because 5 years ago or less even, the natural thing to say would be 4 or 5 engineers, 3 designers, but everything's up in the air. Ted and I can get an extraordinarily long way with the skills that we have. I think the key thing will be design. I have great taste. I've probably lost the muscle memory of what it means to be designing day in and day out. So that will be a key hire. And the next thing will be as I mentioned earlier, distribution. And I think that's where things are going to get really interesting. I don't think we'll shoot straight into perm team hiring there. I think we're going to want to do some really interesting partnerships and collaborations for people that are focused on kind of like amplifying their own voice in professional networks, but especially those that have proven to kind of taken big weird jumps in their careers.
Yeah, makes sense. And so talk me through like the next 6 months or the period through to launch.
Yeah, well, the period to launch is really is timely. We want to capitalize on the new year, new me reflective period. So we're testing kind of the early stage of our prototype now, which is just the past model. I'm doing 60-minute interviews with people, and then I'm asking them to speak to the AI and let me know where the differences are. Launch, we'll be looking at kind of testing aggressively early December with the view that we can launch before Christmas and the break. And that's hopefully where we'll start to get like real momentum kicking up.
Cool, makes sense. And kind of key hurdles from a product development perspective at the moment. What's on your mind?
At the moment, nothing. The anticipated one is trust. I think it's we're going to have to do a really great job at helping people understand that it's safe to have this type of conversation, very personal conversation with not only a company, but a company using these types of enabling technologies.
Yeah. And what are you training your models on?
A lot of it is publicly accessible journals. And then over time, we'll look at doing some more exclusive training, I think, with people that are well respected in each of the areas. But right now, it's all this really great, very structured, publicly accessible data.
No, makes sense. I think that's kind of everything, yeah, from my perspective in terms of where you are, where you want to go, and yeah, how you're thinking about building. So no, thank you for taking me through it.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Just shows if you have a 15-minute time window, you can actually get a lot through.
Yeah, I was very surprised actually. I thought it was going to be like we're scrabbling, but no. And also I think just the way that you think about it, right? It's very kind of clear to me in terms of, yeah, what you want to build and the purpose. So yeah, that was very helpful to hear.
Yeah. Well, I guess from my side, just finally, you know, coming from a founder to a VC perspective, what is it that, I mean, I've seen that your fund is later stage typically than where we are. So what does it look like for you when it, you know, if you were to form relationships with a company like us, and it may be a year or so ahead of where you typically want to get involved? How does that look like from a keeping in touch and keeping us on your radar perspective?
Yeah, I think we try and be as helpful as possible, right? I guess for us, kind of a critical component is what we spoke about, which is how you're going to find those early adopters, how you're going to drive that, you know, customer love, loyalty, retention, all of that piece, because ultimately everything then flows from that. And once you have a sense of that, you know, you have an ability, I guess, to raise those bigger rounds of capital if you choose to do it at that point in time. So yeah, I mean, I think of me however I might be helpful from, you know, particularly I guess a customer and customer journey perspective, UX, all of that piece, right? That's normally where we get involved in terms of, you know, testing, iterating, learning. We also want to understand the product kind of as early as possible, right? And really see how that evolves over time. That's a big part of us understanding you and how you think about it, and also kind of what the product ultimately ends up becoming.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. Well,